Seeing as Freyna builds pretty much kickstarted this channel over a year ago, it makes sense for us to revisit her and see how she's doing inside of Axion Plains, a place that's quite punishing for certain mobbing characters. Now while Freyna is fantastic for ridiculously fast 400% and typical mobbing for level 100 enemies, that takes a bit of a dip inside of Axion due to the extra HP and resistances that the enemies there are now rocking. This means frequently used builds like Contagion and Venom Synthesis will struggle a little, leaving us with a new challenge to get the most out of her in the new zone. So in today's video we'll be breaking down my current go-to Axion build for Ultimate Freyna, explaining the skill rotation and how it all comes together. We've got the modules, weaponry, Arche Tuning, trigger mods and components all to come, so as always if that sounds good to you, what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. So I'm not going to bore you with the intricate details of Freyna. She's been out since the launch of the game and 99% of the player base know exactly how she works. Her skills 1 and 3 are throwable skills and make up most of your damage, creating puddles for enemies to walk into, but they also spread that juicy dots around to others. Skill 4 is your big boy damage dealer, swap into a unique weapon to deal skill damage per shot, as well as additional forms of dots, which can combine with all of your kit for the most DPS possible. Now typically most mobs in 400% and lowers can't survive a single skill cast, let alone a second stacked on top, so before Axion there was no need to reach those DPS heights for all the dots on one enemy, but with the increased enemy density, HP pools and resistances though from the level 190 enemies inside of Axion, Freyna tends to struggle getting enough damage out of them fast, really nerfing her mobbing potential. Now fortunately I do have two setups for today's video, one specifically for Ultimate Freyna and one for regular Freyna, only changing with the module screen for the Descendant, both of which can get the job done in case you don't have a good Inez or you consider yourself a Freyna main. So let's kick it off with the regular Freyna build, one that both the standard and the ultimate forms can both use. The idea behind this build is due to our skill 4 being our biggest damage dealer, perfect for shutting off the resistance, granting eyes or the elites of the level. We want this back off of cooldown as fast as possible, so to do this we'll ideally want to hit that cooldown cap without sacrificing in other areas. So for our damage, as Freyna isn't a crit based descendant, we'll be rocking 4 damage mods, 2 for typical skill power and modify, and then the 2 amplification mods for even more benefit. Power increase and focus on tech will fill those first 2 roles, which in combination with toxic amplification and tech amplification will give us the best damage output without hurting our cooldowns. Now eagle-eyed viewers might notice that we haven't gone for focus on toxic for the cooldown, and that's down to us hitting the cooldown cap in other ways, freeing that up for us with the rest of the DPS. Now as Freyna lives and dies by her skill spreading and also her range, we'll be rocking both skill expansion and amplification control, which when combined with the Arche Tuning allow us to hit that range cap. Skill extension slots in here, allowing part of our dots to stick around for kills, but also to provide us with more duration on our skill 4, giving ample time to fire all of our shots before it goes into cooldown. And our last 3 slots will be going into the cooldown side of things with Nimble Fingers, MP Conversion and Multi-Talented. This will come with a bit of a learning curve to begin with, but once you get used to it, it just kind of becomes second nature, as Multi-Talented requires a Dimension skill cast to grant us 20.5% cooldown buff for 5 seconds, and that's where our red mod of choice and skill 2 will come in, as Toxic Stimulation modifies our skill 2 so that it becomes an AoE buff to teammates as well as ourselves, granting 30% more defense and gives all members when hit a 35% chance to apply even more damage over times to the enemy. Casting our skill 2 before a fight allows us to get tiny cooldowns on our skill 1 and our 3 with 1.1 seconds and 2.5 seconds respectively, perfect for filling a room with death. But the real shine is how this puts our skill 4 on an 11-second cooldown, which allows us to blast those elites and those end level bosses away. One trick to note here is how you need to activate your cooldown buff before your skill 4 ends, not before when it ends. This is both running out of ammo as well as running out of duration, and failing to miss this window will cause you to have a 23-second cooldown with this setup. It's not the end of the world, but misses what that build specialises into. I'd recommend that you use your skill 2 when you get to around about 10 bullets or less inside of the weapon, and that way it's ready to receive the cooldown benefit for when you fire those last few shots. Now instead, if you do have Ultimate Freyna unlocked, there is a slightly stronger build that you can run. Using Venom Injection we can push our modifiers to their limits, but also strip away those pesky resistances, allowing you to deal damage to their juicy parts. The main difference to this build module wise compared to the first will be our ranges are going to take a slight hit, being around about 220% instead of pushing the 300% that the first build could do. But to make up for this though, you will have MP Sustain, allowing for freer use of casting your skills and not having to worry about running out of MP. Once again, our damage mods are going to be Power Increase, Toxic Amplification, Focus on Tech and Tech Amplification, hitting for even more now that we have more modifiers and less resistance for us to worry about. Skill Expansion is the only range increasing mod here, working hard with our Arche Tuning to push us over that 200% range. Nimble Fingers and MP Conversion make a return for our cooldowns, putting us at around about the same level as the last build before Multi-Talented took over. But our last 3 mods are where the changes take place, with MP Collector is going to be our first slot in, helping to feed our skill 2's active duration, meaning that we should never find a time where we're without the buffs or able to cast our skills around the planes. Unfortunately, due to Venom Injection's skill cost of sapping HP before hitting MP, we'll want to rock a shield build to get the full benefit from the initial cast, but also for us to have the chance of staying upright. Overwhelming Shield takes our HP and puts it into our shield at 26.8% of its original value, which still leaves us on the squishy side, especially for Axion. But to make this a bit more palatable, we do go for increased shield, putting us at roughly 8.8k shield with constant regen while that skill 2 is up. Annoyingly, if we had one more free slot, we could have tried out a Decimator or Dangerous Ambush slot in here, but all the slots are basically locked down, and so we kind of really have to rely on those modifiers and the skill power that we have already. Regardless of the build though, we'll be using the exact same trigger module of Power Beyond. This gives us a flat 15% skill power boost just for being equipped, but it also works with our skills 1 and 3 as we cast, resulting in a 4th cast causing that toe effect, which will drag enemies into the radius of our toxins, making it much easier to infect those groups. Fortunately, from here on, all the gear will be staying the same regardless of the build that you will be using, so it should be a little bit easier for us to follow. For our reactor, all of the Freyna's main damaging skills will be tech-based, meaning that a Toxic Mechanics reactor is going to be your best in slot here. For your mounting, a tactical rifle is a must, being Freyna's best weapon to hold at all times, but we'll discuss that a little bit later in the video. Now as for our sub-roles, a toxic and tech ratio would mean the most DPS, but then you'll run into skill uptime issues, along with not meeting the cooldown cap for build 1, and being able to have an extended cooldown on your skill 4 on the second build. So it's for this reason that I'd personally recommend that you find a cooldown and either a tech or toxic ratio, and this will give you easier spam, but still being able to have that respectful damage. Component sets have never been easier. With Freyna being a Toxic Descendant, you'll want to farm out a nice set of Plague, with all 4 pieces granting us a whopping 43.2% toxic skill power, and the 2-piece effect giving us an additional 5% to our tech abilities. Both of these will be bouncing off of your power increase skill power module to provide even bigger boosts, giving us the optimal DPS. For the cores though, you'll want to go max HP and defense for both builds. I did mess about with a shield roll on the second build, thinking that maybe it will provide bigger boost to survival, but that just wasn't the case. With Plague already having fantastic HP rolls in general on all pieces, you'll have some nice staying power with these rolls, and allows our first build to not actually run an HP mod. Now as for the rolls that you'll want, HP and MP rolls as always seem to be the best in slot for Freyna, helping her to maintain MP as she spams and colours the floor green. If you need an idea of what to get, check the rolls on screen for what I use. For our weaponry, and specifically for Axion, we'll want to use our 3 slots to handle all threats in the field. But for 400% and under though, you only need the 1, and that's going to be Secret Garden. Now I'm sure you all know why the Garden is fantastic for Freyna, but for those yet to try her, casting tech-based skills has a chance to provide pest stacks, providing even more skill power for your follow-up skills. It's also one of the best movement statistics in the game once called right, making Freyna fast and hard to hit. For our cores, only the yellow and free slot matter here, with 2 sprint speed cores being ideal and 1 grapple hook charge time mixed in, providing even faster movement around the environment. For our substat rolls here though, they also do matter, but specifically only the rounds per magazine, with a gold roll helping to boost up your shot count on your skill 4. For modules, only the fire rate up, brisk walk and 2 expand magazine mods are going to be important, with brisk walk being fantastic for even more movement speed, but the others are going to feed into the stats of your skill 4 and that unique weapon. Typically here you will see something like Sharp Precision Shot also make an appearance, but from my experience in the planes, you'll need to roll and reposition at times, and this will cause you to lose your stacks and restart at that lower fire rate, and so it's for this reason that I recommend that you do leave it out for this mobbing, even if it is fantastic for bossing. For our other weapon slots though, they all play a role, with our last dagger being our bossing finisher for when our skill 4 doesn't do the job, and our exterminator being designed to strip the armor parts off of the special elite, and even the end bosses in some cases. These just run typical builds and aren't really a huge focus, but I will pop their info on the screen for you here so you can see what I'm currently recommending. Our Arche trees make it look a little bit weird here, but we have set it out like this for a specific reason, with the main focus being towards skill. Heading right of the board allows us to grab more skill power, less cost, tiny bit of range, and more importantly, as we head up to the top right, our mutant cell box and slot in of toxic cohesion for even more toxic skill power and upping our buckets. After that though, we'll start at the centre and head to the top left. None of these boosts outside of the MP recovery modifier do massive things for the build, outside of the times that we need to swap over to something like Last Dagger, but the real prize is going to be that top left mutant cell slot, allowing us to run defense neutralization, as all of our damage will be coming from skills kicking the fight off. Having this on enemies shreds their defense by 50%, but more importantly shreds those elemental resistances by 30%, so in combination with our venom injection, that will push it closer to 55% total, and with enhanced focus rounds doing another 20% of all elemental, this in theory allows us to ignore 75% of toxic resist on all targets once it's set up, meaning more damage overall. 100% worth the point investment. And then lastly comes our Inversion Reinforcement, with skill builds once again getting the short end of the stick. Of course there are a couple of things that can help here, so we'll start by grabbing Arche Circulation Tactic, providing periods of 24% skill cooldown, allowing us to hit that cap without multi-talented. For our build that does rock the talented though, you can always swap this node to Deploy Resonance Device, so you have a little bit more skill duration, so that it doesn't actually turn into a bit of a wasted node. Next up we have focus rounds of choice, with Toxic usually being a solid shout and matching the theme. While the damage is fine, the real star is that enhanced focus rounds, and that is going to be stripping away even more elemental resistance. And then lastly we have our good old friend Selective Neurostimulation, which is going to be helping to keep our MP levels topped up every 45 seconds, sometimes providing enough of a boost for a couple of skill casts alone. And with all that out of the way, that wraps it up for my go-to Axion build for Freyna. While I can't say that she's my main for farming in the plains, she absolutely can still get the job done should you wish to rock her, and she's fantastic everywhere else, so definitely worth your time and investment. While she's still playing second or maybe even third fiddle to Inez, if you're a Freyna main with these setups, you're still going to have a great time. So this is a section I want to hear from you. What are your current thoughts on Freyna? Do you think that she needs help in Axion specifically? And then lastly, what are your current thoughts on Season 3 so far? Let me know all that and more down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourselves safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on our next video.